Imagine you're in a NASCAR race. You're focused on the road ahead, making split-second decisions at breakneck speeds, but every driver knows they can't win alone. They rely on a pit crew working behind the scenes to help them win the race. And in field service, technicians are those in the driver's seat. But even the best drivers need support team to keep them in the game. And that's where technician support agents come in. They're the pit crew handling parts ordering, estimates, NTEs, troubleshooting, so that technicians can stay focused on what they do best, and that is fixing equipment and servicing customers. So today, we're diving into the critical role of technician support in the order to cash process. We'll explore how it could boost technician utilization, cuts down repeat truck rolls, and help retain talent in an industry where skilled technicians are becoming harder to find. And we'll also talk about some of the tools that you can make available to your workforce to enable them to make decisions faster and get work done. But before we do that, first of all, I want to welcome back to the show my co-host Gyner Ozgul, CEO of Rafter X, and I'm also excited to welcome back Symeon, Origo's now new SVP of Transformation. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you doing this new year?
Good. Great. Nice to see you.
Doing great with a great new role and so much opportunity in front of us. So happy to be
Yes.
here and to be with Origo. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, I'm confused whether I should say I'm sorry or congratulations. But I'll let you decide that in a few months.
Let's
here.
make it congratulations. It's going to be good. Yeah.
Somebody's got to keep you in check, Yassin.
Finally, but hey, look, we talk about the technician constraint and the availability of talent, and Gyner, coming from starting at Burger King all the way getting to the boardroom, leading service organizations, probably no one knows more about the technician and the journey in the kitchens and in commercial facilities than you. So I want to maybe first start out by framing the problem and talking about the challenge that we face individually as service companies, but also as an industry, and how that and how to think about solving the problem. Because it definitely we can't say make more babies, make more technicians. Right? You have to solve the problem in a different way. So maybe a little bit of perspective on that end.
Yeah, let me lead with the wrapper of all this is the competency and the work that techs do is like the most important thing at each of those work tickets, right? And really, there's a couple of problems that are kind of evolving in this space right now. One problem is that work labor force pool is shrinking with technicians, as you mentioned in your intro. But more importantly, that just whole blue collar space is just shrinking as a whole. And I'd say a tailwind of that is the demand is increasing, right? So you got demand increasing, work labor force decreasing, and you're like, what am I going to do, right? Which kind of leads to the second problem. There's like a little connection there that you're always trying to drive efficiency into a technician's schedule to enable and unlock our ability to visit more customers, right? The benefit to the customers, they see us quicker, and they also don't pay for training because there is a little bit of that, hey, if the technician's on the phone, doing some parts research, there's this customer thinking, should I be paying for that or not, as an example.
Right.
There can be some really good discussion around that, but we'll set that aside for this discussion. But more importantly, driving the efficiency of the technician and trying to get him to visit like that one more customer a day, right? And what you're doing is you're visiting more customers, check, which is good, but you're also starting to pick away at that labor pool problem, right? Because by driving efficiency, you're able to visit more customers and offset some of that labor constraints that you have today. But I mean, there are some real challenges here, and quite frankly, techs don't like doing admin work.
Yes. No, they don't.
They don't. Yeah. And for the ones that are going to listen to this, they're going to smile when we say that. And unfortunately, the byproduct of growing so fast, and customer needs and customer asks is we keep putting more administrative burden on technicians of work to do. Sometimes it's billable and sometimes it isn't. But in all cases, the techs don't like doing it, right? And we have to solve for that kind of long term differently in this whole space.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? Oh, sorry, but
No, go ahead.
Gyner, that just see that over and over too. Is that concept of putting more administrative burden onto the techs? And sometimes, businesses, they look at it and they say, oh, well, we have to have the techs, right? The techs are the gold, for the driver of the car. So how can I, if I'm looking for costs or looking for efficiency, how can I remove costs from the other areas, but I want to keep my techs? And so then we start piling these administrative tasks, these non-value add tasks, right, onto the techs, and then they're already hard to come by, and now they're doing things that are not really customer value add, not customer facing. It definitely takes some mindfulness as far as, okay, let's think about, what's the best use of each minute of a tech's time.
Yeah. And I would, further than that a little bit, knowing customers throughout the years and being one myself at one point, I don't think a customer will ever fire you for messing up an admin task they may have, but they will fire you if your technician doesn't do a good job on the repair itself, right? So, here we are saying the alignment of values, the technician should be focused on their repair because that's the best customer retention tool. So, how do you strip away some of the other work in order to unlock that value?
Yeah, and there was a research by Epify. They published up. It's a little bit of old research. Technicians spend anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours a day, either updating the work order, waiting on the phone, trying to get through to the technical support at the OEM, or try to get someone to help them, or any task or paperwork, trying to turn a paperwork into a digital order, or something crazy like that. And that's eating up a lot of their time. And I think, Gyner, this is one of the what I've seen. Really, some of your good thinking in how to solve your good problem solving skills. Where we embarked on a journey where we found technicians here in the Philippines who are working for the McDonald's and the Burger Kings. And I'll let you tell that story and how it came about. But yeah, and instead of we pulled them from behind machines or equipment and put them behind a computer instead. And that created a big unlock for your technicians. So I don't know if you want to share a little bit of that experience building an offshore tech support team.
Yeah, for sure. Early on, some of the things we just talked about, we were like, hey, how can we gain minutes? And that's what we're talking about, by the way, minutes every day. Average tech probably runs 5 to 6 calls a day, probably creates 2 to 3 billable events per day out of those calls, right? But if you could save 10 to 15 minutes on each of those calls on these admin burdens, we were like, hey, the simple math of that is you could almost get to a point where he can pick up a call a day, or let's just say 2 to 3 calls incremental a week that he wouldn't, right? If you were kind of on the conservative end, there's like real math here, right? So we came to Origo at one point and we said, hey, we have like this wacky idea. Are there guys there that would be willing to kind of, leave the McDonald's and Burger Kings of the Philippines of the world, doing exactly what our techs do, just somewhere else, where we would incent them and pay them effectively to be our level 1 tech support remotely for our technicians to do the parts research, maybe to help them a little bit with some diagnostic codes or something like that, so that the tech could keep moving, right? He could get going to the next call while this research is still happening, right? And there was a cost benefit we had done that said, hey, look, the whole transaction is about 50% more profitable, even with the offshoring of that resource, to keep him moving along in billing at the rates that he bills. And it was great. I mean, we built a pretty substantial team offshore. Our techs initially, we got the pushback. I know everyone's going to cringe a little about offshore again as they're listening to this. And look, I'll say that it took our leadership collectively, the teams, belief and conviction to the technicians that this would work for us to get past that cultural barrier. But over time, they really embraced it and they saw the value in it. And they're like, man, I could just keep going while someone else is doing some of these non-value add tasks for me.
Exactly. And now, not everyone necessarily embraced it. Some technicians, want to do the stuff, with their own hands, right? Just get out of my way. But the technicians who did, to your point, Gyner, we have noticed that whether it's estimates, and they just love to service. Technicians love to service the customers fast. They love it when in a push of a button they can have the estimates sent while they're on site. They don't have to go back and forth. That's customer experience. That's how you differentiate a lot of times on just the experience. Part research and ordering, right? Go to this website, go to Partstown, go here, do the comparison. That's a lot of time on their phone, right? That they sit in the truck, in the parking lot, right? Looking up parts when they could be working on machine. Man, gathering quotes from OEMs. Hey, send me a quote, or how do I fix this part? During COVID, I remember 45-minute wait time was the norm. You just couldn't get through. Managing inventory, customer NTEs, literally just updating NTEs. How many times the technician arrives on site and the NTE just doesn't match? I would say,
or IVRs, or sometimes, honestly, the customer just wants the solace of knowing somebody is coming.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there are so many touch points. A good friend of mine who's still a mentor of mine used to say, there is 1,000 ways to ruin a work order, and there's only one way to get it right.
Exactly. So Symeon, how do we start? If we are to try to find like these efficiencies, because I'm sure they're everywhere, in every business. So how do we start untangling this technician work, and how do we start looking at, okay, where should they be? Here's how they're spending their time, but here's how they should be spending it instead. How do we start unravel this mystery of where do technicians spend their time and how?
Well, it's your analogy that you started with, and there's some videos out there. But these pit crews, modern day pit crews, are amazing, right? That what used to take a minute, 2 minutes, they do in seconds. But that's so that the driver can get on with driving. As you and Gyner were talking, I'm sitting here thinking too. The technician wants to look good in front of the customer, right? So they can control what they can control. They can troubleshoot faster than anybody. They can immediately figure out what the fix is. They could even find a workaround to keep the customer up and running, right? And then the customer says, great, so when are you going to be back with the replacement part? It's like,
I'm just here to troubleshoot.
I'll have to get back to you. I'll call you in a few hours. Somebody else is going to call you. And to Gyner's point about the way to get the work order, now the whole thing, the customer doesn't remember. Oh, he came in and he immediately figured out what's wrong. I had my personal experience. I shared with you. We had our refrigerator looked at. The tech came in and he figured out what was wrong in something like 5-10 minutes. And then he says, okay, well, we're going to have to order the part. It's like, well, when will the part come? I don't know. I'll have to submit it. And then it's like, well, when are you going to come back? Well, I'm going to put it for 20 days out, my refrigerator. It's like, for 20 days out, we're going to put it, and then we'll see if the part gets here by then. And now it's not a good experience anymore. So understand, recognizing what's going to enable the back office functions, the stuff that the technician doesn't have to do, getting that information to him or her as fast as possible so that they can continue the transaction, the customer interface, the customer facing transaction, and provide them with as much information as possible, even just getting it down to, we've all been there, right? It's like, okay, the technician will be out and it's somewhere between 8 and 5 p.m., 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. It's like, oh my, at least tell me morning or afternoon, right? And then I'd prefer if you say between 3 and 4. Ironically, as they get closer, the estimates turned into like we're estimating that the technician will be there at 2:17 p.m. I mean, down to the minute like that, right? So that kind of information, suddenly now I'm feeling pretty good about it. Now, if they had started with that, it would have been better. But
Yes.
how do we? So what are those pieces? What are the processes needed to come up with the estimated arrival time? What are the processes needed so that it's not on the technician to say, oh, this job's going longer than I expected. I mean, they're going to have to provide some kind of input, but is there a way we can support that? How can we do the research for them so that the part that's needed, the approximate cost of the part, the delivery of the part, how do we get that information to them faster this day and age with the connectivity? Still in all, it's generally faster from an office with a hard connection on your internet than it is over the phone trying to work on a little tiny screen. So how do we support them and enable them to be successful?
Absolutely. And one of the ways that I was able to really go deeper and cover, I came and visited Gyner, and he set me up with a technician. It was actually Rob. He set me up with a technician, and I did a ride along. And I was, like a, you're doing like a time motion, time and motion study, right? I'm just sitting down and saying, what's stopping him and what pisses him off, and how do we get in his way, right? How are we getting in the way of the technician doing the work? And that was probably more insightful than anything else I've done, talking to people, just going, riding with the technician, seeing how he does his business was pretty eye-opening.
And looking at it as we've been talking a lot in terms of inputs, right? What are the inputs that the technician needs to be able to be on site and fulfill everything that the customer needs? And then where are those inputs coming from? So there's the technical support, and there's the pricing or estimating. Maybe there's a quoting side or a scheduling side. Those are very specific processes that stand apart, right? They support every technician out there. So how is it that we build those processes out with minimal impact for the technician? And that ties back to the earlier, just having in mind that this burden of back office type stuff, in the interests of cost savings, putting all of that onto the backs of the technicians is counterintuitive.
Yeah, there's also I'd say a softer impact that's really harder to measure, which is the impact of turnover on technicians when you do all that.
Oh, yeah.
Your incremental uptick in turnover, which costs the business something, and like no one thinks that far ahead, or maybe they dismiss it because their turnover went from 17% to 18%, and they're like, it's only 1%. What's the big deal? It's a big deal, especially when it's really hard to get the guys right now.
Yeah. So one of the things that still stuck in my head, he told me, look, man, at the end of the day, all I want to do is arrive on site, say hi to the customer, fix the equipment, say bye. That's as far as help me do that, and I'm happy camper. I want to make sure that you notified them that I'm coming. They've made room for me, especially in kitchen. It's, very messy place to be in. I've got everything set up. I can, I know what's going on. All the work order details are on the job. I've got, ideally the parts. Sometimes I don't. Make it easy for me to put in parts. If I need NTE estimate sent, I need someone on hold. So really what we created, Gyner, technician concierge, I would say.
That's right.
A technician concierge, whether they need something done internally or at the customer side, or just the folks in their ears, right? Ready to execute whatever the technician is taking their time. So that's the people side. But then let's talk a little bit about what's really the buzz today, AI. So how are we using AI? Shaking his head. How are you using AI to enable our technicians and unlock efficiencies, and and how do we tell the difference between the hype and what's practical?
Just checking. We're not AI, right? This
No,
is
no.
okay.
This
So
is
we're
Gyner.
real people here, so we can
We're
talk
real.
about
I get a lot of calls about the AI stuff, right? And I have a lot of friends that are in different startups on the AI side, and you really have to get a really clear problem statement, and more importantly, one step beneath that, like a clear use case for the AI. Because and this assumes, which I'll let Symeon get into the detail, like you're set up as a business for that, right?
Your process is AI ready.
Your
Yes.
processes, your data feeds, all again. Let Symeon give the specifics around that. But to me, the AI has there's a couple of unique use cases here. One is you can be really upfront about it and filter the calls as they come in from your customers using AI to make sure that the calls that only get dispatched to your technicians aren't the, hey, did you reset the breaker? And now you get a bill that will more likely than not get disputed by the customer for $400 or $500 because your tech drove there, flipped a switch, and left an invoice, right? And believe it or not, there's a lot of those. I mean, there's enough where it's meaningful. Again, we're trying to solve the problem of a constrained workforce and eking out more calls. So if I can eliminate 5-6 nuisance calls a day, now I got 5-6 real calls, and I can solve real customer problems every day, right? So one use case for AI is doing that filter, and the other one is really along what we've just been talking about, our ability to be the concierge for the technician, right?
Yes.
Helping him with simple diagnosis, maybe helping him with more complex diagnosis over time, depending on how much data you feed, helping with parts identification, helping with, hey, maybe I should understand his schedule a little better and group calls to drive better efficiencies. All of those things are things that AI can do today, on the caveat, and I'm going to hand it over to very strategically to Symeon here, that the business has kind of its fundamentals in order.
And I have a few use cases I want to highlight, but Symeon, what are those fundamentals that we need to have in place to make use of AI in your experience, especially now working, behind the scenes? You're across multiple processes. What are you seeing? Some of the stuff you're pulling from the Gimba.
Well, they talk about this even with using the generative AI, the large language models, right? With the ChatGPT and Gemini, examples like that. It's like the question that you ask matters. And the benefit of AI is that it can just scrounge through massive amounts of data extremely fast. But if the data is wrong, it's going to come back to you with a wrong answer very, very fast. And then from the standpoint of, well, what is the output that you're looking for? So we talk about inputs and outputs, and from the business fundamentals, and I think, Gyner, this is some of what you're touching on. What makes your business successful? So you have to understand what good looks like, the outputs that your business, the value that you're bringing to your clients, and the requirements that your clients have of those outputs of that value. Having that very clear and knowing how that's built today, right? Being able to know, if you're using AI, being able to know what questions to ask of AI. So having those the processes very clearly laid out, and maybe as AI continues to advance, it can help to guide or give ideas about which directions to go. But today, right now, you have to determine what good looks like. You can ask AI to draw a picture, right? But is the picture good or is it not? So is your business, what's differentiating your business and helping your technicians to succeed where others are not?
So two areas where I'm really seeing great application of AI, and some of it is successful. Others, it really depends on the the data readiness.
Yep.
And whether and who's training the model? Is the model being trained through said LLM, or do you have to feed it and correct it and review it? And I've seen both cases. The first case is really looking at equipment data and creating like troubleshooting guide. First, doing a download, working with the technicians. Create what's standard work, right? What's the standard work for troubleshooting this type of equipment, this type of equipment, this type of equipment, ingesting all of that, and then feeding and marrying it with data, and then over time optimize it and see the best, outcomes and the most predictable outcomes based on feedback from the technician, if they went through a troubleshooting logic and the outcome that was predicted was accurate or not. So it's a feedback loop, and that's a lot of manual. I haven't seen a lot of success there.
Well, hey, let me caveat that for a second. Part of the reason it's a challenge is because at the technician level, he's protecting what he is. In his belief, there's a little bit of a mental block there. Like, I want to protect the skills and knowledge that I've built for myself for years and years and years. So you're expecting me to teach this AI robot everything that I have learned over the course of my career and help them. And I don't think people help the technicians with how to create a narrative that says something different. Like, hey, at some point, we need to teach the next generation, or we have less of a generation, and some of the customers are going to have to learn from us and do some of their work on their own, unlock you to go work on more complex repairs. Like, that conversation on the why has to happen with the technicians.
Right.
Because otherwise, what they fill in on those blank pages is garbage. All you're trying to do is eliminate my role.
Yeah, it becomes adversarial. Yeah.
And if I could jump on that too, so that's a part of understanding how you create value for your customers. Like, what is your technician population? The younger technicians, the newer technicians, they're going to welcome that kind of help, right? Because then they're not dependent upon somebody. They can pull their phone out, they can look some of these things up. Also, the product lines that you're supporting, is there good information that's out there? To your point, Yassin, about helping to troubleshoot and being able to dig into the tech. So knowing what's available, knowing how accurate that is, knowing what your technician requirements are, what they're looking for, having all that defined, and then finding the AI solution that will fit best.
Yep, and it can be powerful. Look, I've seen it in cases work tremendously, and I've seen it others because we use it as part of providing a service, like the client had it already installed, and others we were part of trying, kind of the implementation, seeing how it goes, and it didn't work so well. So I've seen cases where it works, cases it doesn't. A lot of it has to do with the data readiness, and to Gyner's point, the cultural readiness to embrace these tools. It's easy to buy an ERP that has a mobile app and all the bells and whistles that your technicians could benefit from, but hey, if they don't adopt it, man, oh man. So the more exciting application of AI that I've seen more recently, that where the friction to get started is a lot lower, and we're just starting to do some pilots, is it's by a gentleman who's a common friend of ours, Gyner, Tarek Elinur, right, from Brain CX. I think they're coming out with very, very exciting technology whereby you can create, and let's stick to the technician support. What they're doing is, and what we're doing with them is, we are ingesting a lot of the troubleshooting guides, and then you can call in and talk to the AI and have the AI just run through thousands of troubleshooting guides and learning from cases. Also, you've got, you can ingest cases, right? And effectively do that level 1, right? And then give the technician option to skip to a human or continue working with them and you can ask it anything about the machine. It can read the graphics, the schemas, it can find you anything, and it's just voice activated. It's like you're talking to someone over the phone. Now, sometimes there's a little bit of latency. Other time, it just hallucinates. There's some work that's required, just like teaching a human. So so now we're like we start calling it, and training the model, and releasing it to a few technicians to test it out. But like a fun example of like how intelligent it is. So we were testing it, and the client told the AI, it's like, hey, I don't have hands to change the machine. What do I do? It's just like, oh, I'm so sorry, you don't have hands. Do you have someone around you to help you? It empathized, right? It was empathetic, and it recognized. It's not like a chatbot like you see. There's a level of intelligence and reasoning. And all of these calls are recorded, and it's learning, and we're looking at the experience. We're sending, you send CSAT, and you look at who had a good experience, who didn't, why or why not. And it's still early days, but it's very easy to plug and play. You could literally feed it all of your troubleshooting guides, all of your training that you've got sitting in the LMS, all of your Zoom meetings, transcribe it, feed it, and then it takes some time to learn. But it's the easiest to start, I think, apply today in a practical way to support your technicians. I don't know, Gyner, if you have something there to talk about this new technology that Tariq and the Brain CX team is bringing to the market.
Yeah, I think there's a practical approach to it. A few years ago, AI would have been very complex and has a lot of requirements. I think just the one use case you just gave right now about just using kind of Q&A models and feeding them to your AI and simplifying a task that a tech might have to flip 50 pages to find the question that's relevant to him, that the AI essentially has consumed all of that information. And as the technician interacts with the AI, maybe where it may have taken 5 to 10 minutes, maybe it takes 1 or 2 for him to get to the answer that he needs. I think there's definitely an ability there, and that the tools, Brain CX is a great tool, obviously, knowing Tariq and what he's doing over there. Super cool work that makes it very easy to understand and digest, right?
Yes.
So again, you're winning minutes in this battle with the technician. That's where we started.
It's a battle of minutes. Yes, it's a battle of minutes.
And your customer will see the value in that immediately, right? Because they're going to see that you're leveraging tools to make, to get their equipment up and running, but also to give them the benefit on the billing side.
Exactly. Well, I think this was a great discussion around the use of technician support team and leveraging AI to boost the performance, the field performance of our team. And it's a topic we can go a lot deeper. So if you've enjoyed this episode, let us know in the comments. Share with us your experience. How you have your operation structured to support your field team. What have you seen worked? What have you seen maybe not so much? What AI tools are you putting to test? Would love to hear about your experience. Maybe vendors you would recommend that you'd had a great experience with. Always looking to recommend great people doing some great work. And with that said, hey, happy 2025. We're excited about bringing you more insights from the field. Whether that's in the back office, in the field, or in the boardroom. We've got a really diverse panel here to really address a lot of the challenges service executives and leaders face on a daily basis, and bring some solutions and mastermind around. So thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, stay great.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Make your days great, gentlemen. Thank you.